So my name's Howard Hall. I'm the CEO and founder of DTP Group, and I'd like to welcome you today to a podcast talking about everything AI, the ups, the downs, the pitfalls, the lessons we have learned from other hype cycles, let's call them. But our key speaker today is a gentleman we worked with for a number of years, who knows everything AI, and that is Matt Armstrong-Barnes from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Howard. Great to be here. Yeah, hi everybody. Matt Armstrong-Barnes. So I'm the HPE CTO for Artificial Intelligence. And as Howard alluded to, I've been doing this role for 7.5 years now. So I've been involved in many of the transformations that have happened in the AI space. And I work pretty exclusively working with Hewlett Packard Enterprises, enterprise-grade customers, on helping them achieve the aspirations that AI promises.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So let's start at the beginning here. So where are HPE in terms of AI and working with clients? For me, we're at that early stage of that adoption cycle, but it'd be really good just to put that benchmark statement down there in terms of where HPE sit in terms of customers' journeys that are happening right now.
It's not a new technology. It's not something that we've only just started doing. We've got deep credentials in this space. Everyone's heard of this small organization called NVIDIA. We actually created our first computer vision focused laboratory with NVIDIA technology in 2012. So again, we've got deep partnerships with NVIDIA, and we have continued to drive real innovation in the technology landscape and help customers achieve really transformational things in the AI space. I think lots of organizations, it is a newer technology, and what we're seeing is, yes, this hype cycle continues to go up, but for us, it is something that we've been helping customers both in the early stages as well as the organizations who are building some of the world's most complicated models and doing some really groundbreaking research in the AI space, and ultimately everywhere in between.
And in terms of, I guess, maturity, it sounds like HP have been doing this for a long time, which we know you guys have. The sort of projects that you're getting drawn into, you've talked about research there, but actually in terms of what we would see as users on an everyday basis, where's the rubber hitting the road from a traditional end user perspective?
Yeah, so I think it very much depends on in industry. So if we look at it quite broadly, there are very different levels of maturity. And actually, in lots of large organizations, you have different levels of AI maturity inside an organization. If you take a car manufacturer, highly autonomous drive are doing some incredibly advanced things with AI. Whereas if we start looking at some of the more traditional manufacturing side, probably lower levels of AI. And if we start looking about some of the paid side of manufacturing, very low levels of AI. So as a result, large organizations themselves are kind of struggling with some of this maturity. However, lots of organizations do have AI techniques that they're using in their organizations. They just might not realize that to what extent they're using them, because they're kind of embedded in other services that they're using. What that means is they're using the same intellectual property as everybody else in their industry. So they're not really bringing AI in strategically and getting market differentiation for what they can do with this kind of technology. So huge amounts of use cases that you could deploy, but it's not necessarily about choosing the right use case. It's about getting your organization broadly to the right level of maturity across what you're doing around governance and data and skills and platforms that really allows you to have a coherent strategy that means that you can bring it in successfully.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that we probably want to reference at the early part of the conversation is HP's been eating its own dog food here for a number of years in terms of some of the strategic acquisitions you've made. So Nimble, for instance, and buying that with InfoSight, which is AI driven, I guess fix before fail, predictive maintenance.
Yep.
And other more recent acquisitions around OpsRamp and other organizations like that. So can you just touch on those elements of that, because we look at certain industries out there, as you say, that are the early adopters there in terms of, especially around predictives, and what HP have been doing themselves.
Yeah, so if you look at from the supercomputing world, we've got a significant organic level of AI innovation that we've had for a very long period of time, and we have also taken a look at how we bolster with inorganic, so acquisitions. So we've been acquiring quite aggressively a number of companies over the past couple of years. You've mentioned a couple of them. We've got Blue Data in there, MapR, Determined AI, Pachyderm. So we've got a whole very broad aspects of our portfolio, specifically when it comes to AI. What that means is we're building it into our product set and have been doing that for a very long period of time to make sure that anybody who uses any of the HPE portfolio are really going to get significant benefit from it. And it is algorithmically driven, which means that you can do it at a significant scale. When it comes to building AI systems for customers, specifically around their data, a lot of what we've been doing is making sure that we can help customers understand the data landscape they've got and how they can bring in data from a whole variety of disparate data sources, managed successfully with a high degree of confidence that that data is going to allow them to successfully build an algorithm. We've also been working around how you make sure that you get repeatability across your AI lifecycle. So AI is not a technology that is one and done. You don't deploy it and forget about it, because AIs work with data, and data in any organization inherently changes shape, changes structure. We're getting new types of it all of the time. So as a result, you need to get repeatability into your AI lifecycle management so that as your data changes, so your algorithms can understand the implications of that change in data. And that's really where we've been helping organizations to give them an AI native architecture, which is a coherent stack that provides them all of the services that allows them to, embrace this technology with a high degree of success and significantly reduced timescales.
Yeah, and I guess you're touching on the importance of data there, and we've talked offline before we went live here around the previous hype cycle around big data. And that whole, we're talking over a decade ago for that, where clients seemed to rush out to buy a platform and then went looking for problems. So how much of that sort of those learnings, and we've been around long enough to have seen and be part of that. So those learnings from that sort of, I guess, era, what are we bringing forward in your opinion into this new AI driven world?
One of the challenges in the AI space is organizations are thinking about it on a use case by use case basis. So we get a use case, we use that use case as a means of generating some funding associated with building it. What we then do is look for the data that supports that use case, and then we build a tech stack. What happens when the next use case comes along? Well, we then allocate some funds to it. We then look for the data that's going to support that use case, and then we build a tech stack. Ultimately, what are people arriving at? Two tech stacks. We know that there is a skill shortage in the AI space today. So as a result, it is about making sure that we're not doubling our AI costs. And the way to achieve that is with an AI native architecture that starts to bring in some of the principles around big data. And what that means is we need to start thinking about making sure that we have the right data in the right format, in the right location, with the right volume and the right variety. The reason we have to have all of those things is that then allows us to build a successful algorithm, one that is capable of making highly valuable and informed decisions about the data that it is provided with. If we have inaccurate data or low quality data that we're putting into our algorithms, they're not going to make the same level of high quality decisions or give us the capability to make high quality decisions. So taking a step back, building out an AI strategy that covers the relevant domains that you need in order to put in place that gives you the right kind of foundations really will put you on the path to success.
Yeah, and we've seen, tools that are in the hands of the consumer that are probably helping to drive, I guess, AI in terms of its appeal and it's also its visibility. So there is a difference between Gen AI and AI. So is that something you can elaborate on a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I see significant confusion between the two. So if you think about artificial intelligence is an algorithmically driven technique that is used to find hidden patterns in data. Generative AI is around the creation of digital assets. So they are tackling two different problem spaces. They're doing two different things. Now, that's not to say that you can't bring these two different approaches together to provide you a better outcome. However, what we need to consider is they're trying to tackle two different problem spaces. Fundamentally, they're built on the same technological premises, and you can use the same AI native architecture to build platforms that you can run both of these two different types of AI against. However, you need to use the right type of AI technique against the problem space that you're trying to address. So absolutely, when it comes to using AI or Gen AI techniques, most people today are starting to look at hyperscaler-based models, which are generative AI. They are creating text, or they are creating images, or they are creating sound, or they're creating video. They're doing some absolutely fantastic things. However, via the process of creation, you have to make stuff up. And all generative AI techniques suffer from something called hallucination, which means they're not always correct. And this is one of the problems that many organizations struggle with, is there is a percentage probability that whatever your generative AI technique produces is not correct. And as a result, anything produced by an generative AI technique needs to be fact checked. Or you need to understand that there is an element of risk associated with what the model is producing. Now, you might say, because they're in the 3% type range, they're quite low in terms of the level of hallucination. However, if you are putting 100,000 transactions through a generative AI technique and there is a 3% probability that the answer is going to be incorrect, that's a significant level of risk that organizations are taking on. There are mitigation techniques that you can apply to that, which comes around how you bring AI and generative AI technologies together.
And you touched on their hyperscalers. I mean, again, AI and testing AI. I mean, the hyperscalers, it seems that that's not a bad place to start in terms of their tooling. But actually, I'm guessing I'm making a statement there. I don't know if that's fair and true in a lot of cases, but also in terms of when you move from test and POC into production, I guess, it's not necessarily the case that the hyperscaler is then the best place to maintain your, AI, journey, let's call it.
Yeah, so I think if I were to describe, so thinking about generative AI, if you think about the generative AI approach as being a pyramid, right at the very top, you have the organizations who are capable of designing the neural networks that you need in order to build out your generative AI algorithms. Right at the very bottom, you have people who are consuming via an API the models that other people have produced, the hyperscalers. There are two fundamental layers that still exist in that pyramid. So below the people who are creating the neural networks are those people who are capable of fine-tuning the neural networks that somebody else has constructed with their own data. So again, what this means is you have a generative AI technique or generative AI implementation that not only comes with all of the value associated with understanding language, but it understands your data as well. Very computation intensive, high degree of skill. Lots of organizations who start off using a general purpose generative AI technique start to become a little bit frustrated because the general purpose models don't understand their data or any of their data that is not in the public domain. They suffer from hallucination, and you need to start be putting your highly sensitive corporate assets into somebody else's data center for use with somebody else's algorithm. So then think, well, I'll take a model, because I can get a lot of open source models, and how do I train my data into it? High degree of skill, high degree of complexity, extremely computationally expensive. Hint there, it's quite expensive. So that the intermediary level between consumers and fine tuners is what we at HPE like to call orchestration. So here I can bring a foundational open source model that somebody else has constructed, and I can plug it together with my data. In doing that, I don't need to do the extremely computationally intensive activities of training an artificial neural network, but I can bring my data in together with it. And by doing that, I mitigate the risks of hallucination, because when I get an answer, the model will tell me from my data where it got that answer from. I'm keeping all of my data behind my firewall, so it's in a protected environment. So I'm mitigating intellectual property, I'm mitigating data loss prevention, and I'm mitigating any intellectual property challenges. And as a result, this is where we're seeing lots of organizations moving to. So they start off with a hyperscaler based model. Because of the challenges associated with their use, they then move into this orchestration layer where they're bringing in open source models behind their firewall and plugging it together with their data. And as a result, they're getting all of the benefit of using generative AI techniques without some of the inherent risks.
Yes, I guess a big part of that is where HP and NVIDIA are playing together is those sort of pre-trained models where, so it's taking things that are already well on the production line and then applying into your own environment to give you that sort of speed to outcomes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big things we announced at Discover is something called Private Cloud AI, PCAI, which is a joint offering between HPE and NVIDIA, where we're bringing in the NVIDIA inferencing microservices, or NIMs, which are containerized based deployments of language models highly tuned for the NVIDIA stack, as well as the HPE AI Essentials, which gives you all of the AI lifecycle management and access to data that you need. Bringing these two software stacks together on top of the combined HPE and NVIDIA infrastructure really gives you a massive accelerator to deploying, to orchestrating generative AI techniques, and give you the benefit of on-prem Gen AI deployments, as well as allowing you to work with AI techniques using tried and tested tooling to manage your AI throughout the construction lifecycle.
Cool. And I guess what we're seeing now is, that solution is brilliant. It was launched best part of 8 months ago, and we're seeing clients adopting it now, which is fantastic. But in terms of what you guys have seen prior to that and since, what are the challenges that you're seeing the clients coming to you with typically?
Yeah, so a lot of organizations, they're struggling with the level of choice in the AI tool chain. So when it comes to how you build a model, there are hundreds of choices that you have to make from the open source and the closed source space. Even if you want to build some of the stuff in a hyperscaler environment, you still need to make decisions about the tools. And lots of the the public cloud providers are using open source components in their stack. So what they've come to us and said is, well, actually, I don't want to worry about the stack. I don't want to worry about the tech stack that's going to live underneath it. I want to focus on the business problems. So they come to HPE and say, I want to focus on the business problems. I might have an understanding of my data. I need to work with an AI center of excellence from HPE who can provide some of the skill around how to turn that data and make it ready for use with an algorithm, and then also work with an end customer on construction of the algorithm, but also how they have a tried and tested tech stack with all of the tools built into it in a layered architecture that allows them to have confidence around how they're building their models. answering basic questions like, where do you store them once you've built them? How do you stand up an API endpoint that you can consume in a production setting? How do you make sure that your data is secured and controlled? How do you track your experiments and make sure you're managing them in the right kind of way? These are tools that HPE has selected very carefully from the open source community, which means we are pro-choice on the tools that you can select and how you bring them into your organization, but we mitigate the open source risk associated with bringing them in because we make sure that they are kept up to date at the latest versions. We give you support stacks that you can, if there are any issues with the open source tooling, you'll hit a HPE support stack instead of just going to the general open source community asking for resolutions. Those are a lot of the challenges that our customers are coming to us from an AI native architecture approach. We're also engaging around strategy. So how do you build an AI strategy? What does it look like? How do you gauge maturity? How do you find out whether or not you've got all of the right foundational steps in place that mean that you're going to be successful on your AI journey? Because there are still a significant number of AI initiatives that are not successful because they're not using the right foundations aren't in place. People are rushing out there to embrace the technology without getting themselves AI ready. And that's another thing that HPE can definitely help with.
And I think there's a series of, I guess, workshops that you guys offer in conjunction with partners like ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to we'll do an AI maturity assessment with customers to help them understand of all of the areas of AI that they need to think about, because fundamentally it's a complex technology space. However, if you have the right partnership in place, an ecosystem of partners who can help you be successful, and a level of where you need to mature, because it might be that you're already mature in certain areas, you just don't know it, and you'd like someone to come in and have a look and make sure that what you've got in place is fit to accelerate your AI journey, or areas where you need additional support. And that's really about engaging with organizations who have absolutely trodden in the AI footsteps for a significant length of time, and could be your partner when it comes to building out any implementation that you want, and make sure that it's done in the right kind of way, mitigating a lot of the significant pitfalls that you can encounter while going on the AI journey, which ultimately reduces the length of time it takes you to achieve the technology, massively increases the chances of success, and also drives the right kind of business benefit.
Yeah, and touch on business benefit there in terms of that workshop-based approach. How important is it to have not just IT in the room for that, and have business in there as well, business stakeholders?
Absolutely. If we think about AI from an organizational perspective, there are a number of techniques that you can apply when it comes to building your organization to get it AI ready. One is to group all of your data scientists or analysts or people who are looking at your AI techniques into one area and create a single center of excellence. That normally creates a little bit of an ivory tower because it moves the experts around data a step away from where the data is being created. And over time, those two will start to diverge. However, what you want is to leave the expertise as close to where the data is being created as possible, but still use a center of excellence style approach to provide commonality of tooling, best practices, sharing knowledge, and ultimately making sure that you're governing these kind of techniques, you're applying the right kind of ethical principles to them. So there's commonality between these two approaches. And by doing that, you create, AI factories where you have the right kind of conveyor belts in place that then each of the individual business units or areas of the business that are creating data can leverage the conveyor belt to successfully allow them to move AI initiatives through a life cycle. So when it comes to any kind of workshopping approach, it's absolutely critical that you get the right kind of stakeholders from across the business, be that in the business, be that from IT, who are experts at creating repeatable and automatable platforms, as well as stakeholders from security. We're talking about how we bring significant high value data assets into locations, and you need to make sure that they are secured in the right kind of way. If you've got data guardians, you need to make sure that you're using the data in a way that is compliant with either regulatory compliance or how data governance around that is managed from a data ownership perspective. So getting the right stakeholders in the room is critical, and one of the key ways that will help you understand the levels of maturity that exist within your organization that ultimately will allow you to be successful.
And you mentioned data scientists there. For a lot of organizations, that's not something that they have, so in terms of their adoption of AI, they're probably looking for more off the shelf or stuff that they're just tweaking, tailoring for their environment without having to go into the depths of, understanding and applying, the science element to their data to get to outcomes. So, I mean, outcomes, things that you've seen, that have impressed you out there. I'd be keen to hear on that. And also, I remember, we've had a recent statement from UK government that the UK government wants to make the UK a leader in AI across the world. So is there stuff that you're seeing out there that gives you hope on that particular statement?
Yep. So I think when it comes to data science, think about it, data and science, split the two terms apart. When it comes to your organizational data, you are the experts on it. So when it comes to engaging with a centre of excellence from the likes of HPE, we can absolutely help you with the science side of it. You need to bring the data understanding from your organization. And this is the same with any partnership that you engage with. No matter how hard an organization tries, they'll really struggle to become experts in your data. And that is where I tell organizations that I work with to focus on. Understand your data, understand what it means to you, understand what the salient features are, the most important aspects of your data and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. The science side of it, you can get help with. So absolutely, yes, build an ecosystem of partners who can help you be successful on this. In terms of the recent government announcements, yes, absolutely fantastic news. So the UK's biggest supercomputers are all based on HPE technology, Isambard in Bristol, as a prime example of that, of a recent government initiative to deploy modern supercomputing. And if we kind of look at the landscape around the world, the EU AI Act, which is something that has recently been enshrined in law in the European Union, is really going to shift some of the balance associated with the levels of investment that are coming in. I've written a whole blog article for anyone who does follow me on my blogs. If not, I've written an article all about the EU AI Act and some of the implications around EU member states associated with that. That positions the UK as a prime place to attract significant levels of AI investment, driving out initiatives, creating algorithms. And as a result, it really was fantastic to see the right kind of movement across the UK that will help us catch up with where they are in the US. Because if we look at a lot of the unicorns that are coming out, some of the great startup initiatives, sort of quite a lot of things that are happening in the generative AI space, they're really being driven by, well, not by the UK at this moment in time. There were some big European AI startups in the Gen AI space that have captured everyone's imagination in the enterprise space. In the consumer space, a lot of that has been driven out of the US. So now, having us focus around AI initiatives, driving this forward, getting us ready from a regulation perspective, helping drive co-innovation with industry across UK public sector organisations, embracing it to drive operational efficiency, absolute music to my ears. And I'm very enthusiastic about the future that this will bring us and how it will help us level us up from a country perspective to make us at the absolute forefront of the latest AI initiatives.
Cool. I think one of the things that what people don't realise is, or it doesn't come straight to mind, is around the type of data that we can leverage for this. And video, for me, is we're doing quite a lot of work around video in terms of AI and machine learning. So you're seeing much there yourself from a HPE perspective. and an AI perspective?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, we created our first computer vision focused center of excellence within video in 2012. So something we've been focused on significantly for the past, 12, 13, 14 years. And as a result of that, when it comes to processing of video, there is something called HLP, human level performance, which is one of the base mark characteristics that we have in the AI world. Computer vision is absolutely one of those very mature areas of AI that is on par. So when it comes to processing any forms of video streams, any form of imagery, we absolutely have the right level of open source technology to tackle those problems. And if you think about AI as being grouped into, it does one of three things: regression, classification, and clustering. What that means is, if your problem is related to working out the probability of something, grouping things together, or applying labels to things, that is exactly what AI is great at. So when it comes to working out if it is a picture of a human being in a picture, AI is brilliant at that, and has because this is a probabilistic mathematics problem, that is one of the things that AI excels at. So yes, anything to do with image and video streaming, if anything, AIs are better at it than human beings and have a higher attention span. So I'm sure if you're looking at very dull image streams, it becomes quite difficult to keep the right level of intellectual involvement with what's happening. AIs have the capability to process image streams with a high degree of accuracy, without getting bored or tired.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting when talking to those sort of experts around, they can see fire and alert against it, for example, or hear sound and alert against it much faster than we can as humans. I mean, one of the use cases that I heard was American City, where they were triangulating gunshots. Yes. And they could pinpoint to where that actually happened a lot quicker, than just waiting for the Joe Public or an incident to be reported in and respond to it. These sort of things, I guess, they're scary on one side, but they're, make drive efficiency, and accuracy on the other side a lot better, and faster and more, economically than we can using traditional methods. The video piece, and you rightly say, video can, AI monitoring video. We've seen some really interesting use cases there. Is that something, in terms of video, is that an area that you can combine with other sort of data sources to even make it a lot more accuracy? I know HP use video in their manufacturing process to monitor the server builds. Is that something you've also come across?
Yes. So we do. So we used it as a means. We have 6 cameras that look across the production line, and they're looking for anything that is out of specification. And they obviously have a high degree of accuracy. It increases our throughput and has a material uptick in terms of the extremely high quality of product that was already coming through, to make sure that everything is built to spec. We've also seen quite a lot of use cases. Safety, are people, and this is where I'm bringing in specific zoning based data, are people wearing the appropriate protective equipment when they're in dangerous locations? Are people in the right locations that they're supposed to be in? Are people in crowded environments falling over? So there's quite a lot of techniques where you can use AI algorithms with fairly straightforward image or video streams to make sure that people are having the highest degree of safety that they can. So absolutely, there are use cases associated with this. So if you're in manufacturing, lots of good quality manufacturing use cases specifically around quality assurance. Lots of ones from a building perspective to make sure that your staff are as safe as possible and wearing the most appropriate protective equipment when required. So yes, cyclist safety. So we've done quite a lot of work around the world looking at, we're sort of, anyone who's been to London recently, the volume of cyclists is significantly increasing, and that's becoming a bigger macro trend around the world. So cyclist safety, using cameras to work out whether or not people there are particular choke points, so that you can make design and planning decisions, whether or not there are any accident black spots, again, to help with making sure that people are as safe as humanly possible. So loads of great examples of where you can use computer vision oriented techniques specifically around video streams.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it sounds like the use case is the art of the possible is, as big as we can imagine, almost to an extent.
Yes.
I guess
Yes.
funding that is one of the big challenges, isn't it? Because we talk about UK government wanting to be a world leader in AI and drive that agenda, and then transforming UK public sector, for instance.
Mm.
How do we fund that? Because for me, a lot of that is, let me call it spend to save initiatives, but it takes a bit of boldness and imagination and some real good detail there to be able to take that leap, almost like a leap of faith, if that makes sense. It's a leap into the unknown for a lot of people. How do HPE sort of help organizations take that leap?
Yeah, so I think the first one is absolutely, we're experts in data. So we help organizations understand their data. We can absolutely work on building out some initial capabilities as proof points to show the value of the technology. We don't prove the concept because AI as a concept has been around for decades. What we do is prove the value. So if you're thinking about AI initiatives, HPE can help because we can help prove out whether or not it will bring the value that you're expecting associated with the data that you have. Also, where the generations coming through have a different expectation on their ability to interact with data. So historically, I'm old enough. When I was interacting with data, it was computational. I needed to have a programmatic interface. I needed to be writing SQL queries. That was the way that I interacted with the data that was being generated in organizations. People coming through expecting to have a conversational relationship. And as a result, that means that in order to make sure that we are attracting and retaining the demographic of highly skilled talent that we need in our organizations, because they are coming through being much more aware of how to use AI techniques. And as a result, organizations need to start thinking about this is part of the talent attracting and retaining technique, which is providing them interfaces that they can chat with the data. So, for example, we have Chat HPE, where there is a chat interface that you can have with HPE data. So instead of having to hunt around on SharePoint sites to try and find things, you can have a conversational relationship with it and find it for you. And this is using this orchestration that I talked about a little before. The official term is retrieval augmented generation. You can tell these people didn't work in marketing. So RAG is the technique that allows you to build out capability to have a conversational relationship with your data, which is where the generations coming through are expecting to have that kind of relationship, opposed to being, lots of us who've been in the industry for a long period of time are very familiar with trying to hunt out things. Nowadays, if you want to get the productivity improvements that we're expecting, we need to provide the right kind of interface and tools that allow us to get that level of efficiency.
I guess it's a good point you make around that generational thing, in terms of younger people being a lot more fait with adoption of new technology and different technology, whereas there's the oldies like me. We probably need to see some semblance of what we've always seen there. And again, a great example of that would be, and if people have the opportunity to look this up, HPE's CEO Antonio Neri being turned into I guess the front end of a chatbot into a repository, and called Antonio Nearly, I think was the acronym. So I guess that's probably a good point for us to close on it. I guess it's been really good chatting to you, Matt, about this as usual. So any sort of final points, final words of wisdom that you just sort of like to give just before we close?
One of my favorite phrases, I've tried to trace the origins of it and been unsuccessful, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. And this is absolutely true of AI. If you want to get started and go really quickly and encounter all of the challenges that you're going to bump into along the way, go alone. If you want to be much more successful, achieve things much quicker, it's all about partnership.
That's a perfect way to end. So with that, I'd love to thank you for your wisdom as usual. It's always great to chat, especially AI and ML. We've both got a bit of a pedigree in those particular areas, especially around data. So with that, thank you, and thank you to our audience for listening.